Hello. I'm a few minutes late. My apologies. Time is flying by on this Indigenous People Day weekend. Am I live there? I look like I froze for a second. Here I am. My name is Kristen. I'm the director of the Island Free Library on Block Island, and this is a daily program of short stories for adult listeners. We've been having some fun with the Block Island stories, The Ghosts of Block Island by Fran Migliaccio. And I put in a few different authors in there. While I've been reading these ghost stories yesterday, I posted Ray Bradbury, and then there was a little flash fiction that I read from online too the day before. We did Lovecraft earlier in this week, but I am short on time and not very prepared. So why not go with another ghost story of Block Island, The Ghosts of Block Island by Fran Migliaccio, because we like them and I can read them quickly and put my finger on this book. Although I have been sent a good story, and I will polish that one up for another day. And I will, diversify it. But for today, Friday afternoon, October 9th, 2020. Hello to my dad. Hello to my mom. Hello to my other listeners. Hello. Let's do some Block Island stories. I know that's good with you, right, Dad? Okay. So we've read, we've had some stories here. We've done some of these stories, but here's one we haven't. This is Who Roams High in Atlanta. Atalanta. Geez. Who roams high in Atlanta at the High View? Gary has ghost stories about the High View. Raleigh reported to me on a February afternoon in 2005 after he'd been to the Block Island grocery. Raleigh easily makes an hour-long excursion out of a trip to the grocery or post office. A master of the downtown island social encounter, his stock in trade is all sorts of information, which he delights in exchanging every place he goes. He stops and chats with everyone at the store's deli counter, including manager Gary Ryan, who always wears a smile. Part of Gary's hospitality ethic stems from the late 1980s and early 1990s when he was a partner and chef at the High View Inn. I was on the phone to Gary the next day and met with him and his wife Bonnie at their Pilot Hill home on a wet and stormy Valentine's Day afternoon. The Ryans came to Block Island in 1986 with their 4 young children, Eric, Jordan, Sean, and Hillary. The young family had lived on Long Island. Gary, an optician, commuted 4 hours every day to his New York City office. A turning point for the Ryans occurred when Gary was diagnosed with thyroid and parathyroid cancer in the mid-1980s. Medical treatment was timely and proved successful, but the Ryans were ready for a lifestyle change. Meanwhile, Bonnie's mother, Lillian Seaman, had been contacted by her niece Marilyn Wolfie Wolf about a business opportunity on Block Island. The High View Inn was for sale, and Wolfie wanted Lillian and her husband Jerome to buy into the business and partnership with her. The Seamans already had a house on Minister's Lot bought in the 1960s at their niece's urging. Oh, I don't know. Only if Bonnie and Gary go too, Lillian told Wolfie. We jumped at the opportunity, Bonnie recounted the story to me. We bought the High View in September of 1985 with my parents and Wolfie. Gary was operated on in November. We sold our Long Island house on Christmas Eve, and we moved to Block Island in February 1986. Gary spent March and April that year refinishing the dining room at the High View. It's still one of the prettiest dining rooms on the island. Bonnie's parents moved to Block Island in March. Sadly, Jerome Seaman died 1 week after the move. The 4 remaining business partners owned the High View for more than a decade. We all shared responsibility, said Gary, though he was the designated chef, while the others pitched in at the desk and telephone, room cleaning, bartending, and various other duties. The inn was old-fashioned in style with shared baths. The restaurant had enjoyed a good reputation for many years, and the new partners maintained it. I remember two stories about the Highview from the late 1980s, Gary told me. Two different people had strange experiences. Both were young women in their 20s, and both stayed in the same room. These incidents were several years apart, and the two women didn't know each other. The guest rooms had all been given the names of ships, and the room where odd events seemed always to occur was called Atalanta. It was a corner room up on the third floor. It was a bizarre room, agreed Bonnie. No matter what kind of people stayed in it, strange things were reported about that room. One event, continued Gary, occurred when one of the two young women that I mentioned was upstairs in Atalanta, lying in bed. She looked up and saw an apparition of a young girl in a white dress going past the open door of the room. She said it was a form, not a solid person. It was definitely the form of a young girl, definitely in white, and it seemed to be floating past the door. The woman got really hysterical after she saw it, and she ran downstairs. The second incident that I heard about happened in that same room. As I said, it was a different woman staying there and a different year. This time, the woman was lying in bed reading a newspaper. While she was reading it, the paper suddenly ripped in half all by itself. When Sarah Fink was the speech pathologist at the school, she stayed at the Highview each time she made one of her trips to the island, said Bonnie. At least she did when we owned it. Sarah stayed in a room on the first floor. She said that she had the experience when walking up the stairs to her room of feeling a presence next to her. Someone was walking up there with me, she told me. She said it was definitely female, and when she said something to it, the presence disappeared. We had to give her credit for staying in that building all by herself in the middle of winter, added Gary. Bonnie had her own experience in the old hotel. I remember one day when I was up in Atalanta making beds, she said, I felt a draft blowing through, like air coming from outside, through an open window. Except the window wasn't open. There was no breeze coming in and no reason for any draft. When Gary told me the stories of the two young women having experiences years apart in Atalanta, he said, it sticks in my mind that one of them might have been Liz Coles' sister, Stacy, but I'm not really sure. Her name comes to mind for some reason. Liz Coles, owner of the boutique Distant Shores under the National Hotel, had worked at Esta's gift shop for a number of years before starting her own business. Liz, years ago, had told me several stories about Esta's and the new Shoreham house. I called Liz and asked her about the Highview. Stacy and I rented a room on the top floor of the Highview during the late 1980s when we both worked at Esta's, she told me. The room had two beds, a sink in the corner with a mirror above it, and a bathroom in the hall that was shared with other rooms. Stacy and I would consistently hear an odd noise. It sounded like a wooden pencil or a quarter rolling across the floor. We would hear it at least 3 times a week, at different times, sometimes after dinner when we were sitting in the room reading, sometimes in the middle of the night if we got up to go to the bathroom. It was strange, unpredictable. We never saw or found anything that would make that noise, and we always remarked on it to each other. It was like something trapped in the floor. She added that Stacy had experienced a couple of odd events in the room. Oh, yes, I remember that room at the Highview, responded Stacy Marsh when I reached her at her home in Albany, New York. Stacy, too, cited the odd noise, like that of a pencil or a quarter rolling across the floor. Sometimes it would wake us up and we'd say, oh, yeah, there's that noise again. She added, I experienced two distinct things in that room and proceeded to tell me about them. Both were different from the occurrences previously described to me by Gary Ryan. One time, said Stacy, I was sitting in the room writing a letter to a friend. It was a 2-page letter, and I was holding a page in each hand, reading it over. As I held that letter, I felt hands on me, a hand on each of my forearms. It was as if someone was standing in front of me, pushing my arms apart. I very clearly felt those hands on me pushing. There's no other way to explain it, and there was no one there. At that point, I decided, yep, time to get out of here for a while. The other experience occurred at the sink. I was getting ready for bed one night when I was really tired, washing my face at the sink. I suddenly found myself staring into the mirror. I heard a voice talking, and after a while, I realized it was my voice, but I wasn't talking. I felt that someone was channeling through me. It was very strange listening to that voice, realizing it was my own, but I wasn't saying anything. I had a sense of time passing. I have no idea how long I was there, looking into the mirror and hearing the voice, but it seemed that I had been there a while. I couldn't tell what the voice was saying, even though I felt like an observer and it was my voice. It was a very weird feeling. I'd always had a vague belief in ghosts, but those are two experiences that I remember crystal clear. I was very scared sometimes in that room, but I never felt that there was anything really bad there. Stacy added, oh, and there was one other thing. When Liz and I worked at Esta's, the store used to sell seashell wind chimes. We put some of those wind chimes in our room at the Highview. There would be times in our room when the curtain was perfectly still, but the chimes would be moving and ringing without any wind. Relatively little has been written about the history of the Highview. Originally called the Connecticut House, a name it kept for 10 years, the hotel was built in 1878. The first owner, Gary Ryan told me, was M.M. Day. Gary said that when he was refinishing the front desk area in the 1980s, he found a place where M.M. Day had carved his name in the wood of the building above the desk. I suppose it's still there, he shrugged. M.M. Day died a few years after the hotel was built, and it was taken over by his wife and son. The 1977 book, Research, Reflection, and Recollections of Block Island by Fred Benson mentions Jenny Day as an early owner of the Connecticut House. She was probably M.M. Day's widow. The first hotel guest register, dating from 1878 to the 1890s, records the name of owner Elmer H. Day, probably the son. Also recorded in the register are some names of distinction. President Benjamin Harrison signed in on December 1st, 1890, and President Grover Cleveland on August 3rd, 1893. Gary told me that the White House Marching Band and boxer John L. Sullivan had also stayed at the hotel during those years. The Highview, he remarked, is the second oldest continuously operating hotel on the island. The oldest is the Spring House. He added that the Highview has had relatively few owners since the Days owned it, and had passed through the hands of only 4 other owners when it was sold to the Ryans and Siemens. No discussion of the Highview is complete without some mention of the impressive Weatherby murals and paintings that adorn the walls of the hotel. Itinerant artist H.D. Weatherby came to the island in the late 1940s with Captain Gene Stinson and his son, Stanley. The Stinsons were sword fishermen, and they took Weatherby, then about 50 years old, fishing aboard their boat, the Stanley. The Stinsons lived across the road and down the hill from the Highview, and Weatherby settled in at the hotel, which was then undergoing renovation. In exchange for room and board and a bottle of scotch each day, Weatherby painted wonderful images of island life on the walls of the hotel's guest rooms, dining room, and ground floor bar. The artist's daily routine was to sketch at various locations on the island in the morning, sketching on paper bags or whatever came to hand, paint at the Highview in the afternoon, and enjoy his bottle of scotch in the evening. His Highview paintings were created in 1948 and 1949. Weatherby seemed to recognize that life on Block Island was different and that it couldn't last forever. His paintings capture the way of life and the familiar faces in the fishing port, the colors and spareness of the late 1940s island landscape, from the west side to the old island center, New Harbor, and Old Harbor, characterize his work. Weatherby's portraits of actual sword fishermen of the day are unmistakable to those who knew them. The faces and figures endowed with the personalities of the people represented. Weatherby's paintings at the Highview include 24 individual images in the bedrooms featuring fishing boats and island scenes. In the dining room are 9 large-scale images prominently featuring the sword fishing Stinsons, as befits a restaurant that built a reputation on Block Island swordfish. In the ground floor bar, now known as Club Soda, a mural depicting island landscapes winds its way across all the walls, surrounding the beholder with a Block Island of the past. The paintings are priceless. Many, particularly in the bar, have deteriorated over the years. Some have been reproduced as prints and are available at island galleries. Weatherby left the island in the early 1950s. Gary said that he met Weatherby's nephew during the time the Ryans had the Highview. The nephew told him that his uncle had died alone and homeless in the 1980s on the streets of New York. Whatever pieces of the past may linger in the Highview, Gary Ryan maintains that he doesn't believe in ghosts. Still, he believes that there is something in the Highview, some presence, certainly in the room known as Atlanta. The building definitely has its creaks and things move, he said. Nice one. That's a really nice one. And let's come together and say, we're thinking of you, Bonnie. We're thinking of you, Bonnie and Gary. We're thinking of you. Okay, so boy, that could start a little bit of a course towards the hotels. There's a few more hotel ones in here, but there was a nice short one that I was going to do. We can do the hotel ones. Okay, let's do this short one and then we'll call it a day for Friday. We have more time for Halloween. We'll get to more. But for today, this second one from Fran Migliaccio's first book, Ghosts of Block Island, is titled A Ghost Who Unveils the Sunrise. I've been meaning to tell you I have a ghost, said Bob Pollitt to me one morning as we met in front of the bank at Bridgegate Square. Bob, who has an old farmhouse at Dunn's Landing, is a member of the Dunn family, which has a long history on Block Island. Bob was a banker in Essex, Connecticut, before he and his late wife, Duffy, decided to move to Block Island year-round. Bob has been a dedicated member of the Block Island Ecumenical Choir's tenor section and a talented song and dance man in the choir's annual variety shows. When he is not on the island, Bob is likely to be traveling in England, Africa, South America, or on a cruise ship with his nephew, island well driller Rick Batchelder. After mentioning his ghost, Bob hastily added, I mean, I don't believe in ghosts and all that stuff, but I have a door that opens itself. I was all attention as Bob went into more detail. I've shaken it after closing it. I've made sure it's set right. I put a rug in that room to keep the door from opening once it's shut. Darn thing still comes open, he added. It's got one of those old-fashioned latches, the kind where the bar fits into a metal groove. Every time I shut the door, I try to get it open by pulling it and rattling it, but I can't get it open that way. I always make sure the latch is closed tightly, but that door always opens. Happens at night. Been doing it for years. Does it open quickly or slowly? I asked. I just hear a little click as the latch comes up, he replied, and it doesn't open really wide, just slightly ajar, about 4 or 5 inches. The windows in the room beyond look east, he added, so when the door is opened at night, I can see the first rays of the sun in the morning. An old building settling, vibrations from some external source, not likely the way Bob described his own rattling of the door, or a gentle, benign spirit who wants Bob to awaken to a view of the sunrise. All right, let those simmer with you for today, for this afternoon. Maybe you can find a warm, sunny spot and get out of the wind. Hope you enjoy it. 3-day weekend out here. I'd like to celebrate Indigenous people over this weekend. I hope you do as well and give a thought to that. I should probably read a story about that. Comes to mind, okay? Something else on our list for us to do for stories here. Until then, mask up, wash up, keep your distance, stay safe, eat right, sleep right, be good, drink water, turn off the TV, call someone you love, stay calm, be well. Go back and listen to more Frankenstein Tea on our YouTube channel. See you tomorrow at 3. Peace.